Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Well, today we're going deep into ancient Egypt, but with a twist. We're talking aliens.
Aliens in ancient Egypt.
Exactly. Remember that book, Aliens in Ancient Egypt, by Xaviant Haze?
Oh yeah, the one with the really bold title.
That's the one. We're going to dive into it today and see what kind of evidence this author's cooked up. He lays it all out in 11 chapters, each one promising some new piece of the puzzle.
Sounds intriguing. So where do we start?
Well, right off the bat, Hayes talks about these golden ages in ancient Egypt, these periods of like crazy advancement in art, science, technology, almost like they popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, those periods are fascinating. It's hard to explain how they went from, basic structures to these incredibly complex pyramids seemingly overnight.
It's wild, right? Like, did someone flip a switch and suddenly, boom, they had all this incredible knowledge? Hayes proposes that maybe, just maybe, human history isn't a straight line of progress.
I see where he's going with this. What if we actually declined from a previous, more advanced civilization?
Exactly. And get this, he points to the reign of Akhenaten and Nefertiti as a potential example of this lost golden age. We're talking like stargates, sacred geometry, free energy, maybe even anti-gravity tech.
Well, hold on. Stargates. Anti-gravity. That's getting pretty sci-fi.
I know, right? But isn't that kind of the point of these deep dives, to explore those wild possibilities? If they did have this knowledge, what happened to it? Did it get lost over time, or is it still out there, hidden somewhere?
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's talk pyramids.
All right, let's do it. Now, everyone knows the traditional view is that they're tombs for the pharaohs.
Right, giant elaborate tombs.
But here's the kicker. No mummies have ever been found inside a pyramid.
Wait, really? So what were they for? Just giant landmarks, grain silos?
That's the million-dollar question. Hayes suggests their purpose was way more advanced, like take the Great Pyramid. It's located at the exact geodesic center of the Earth's landmass.
Geodesic center, you mean like the center point of all the continents?
Exactly. That kind of precision implies a level of geographical knowledge that just seems impossible for their time.
Yeah, they'd have to have mapped the whole world with incredible accuracy, which we assume they didn't have.
Right. And then there's the whole question of how they even built those things. I mean, those stones are massive.
And Hayes throws in another curveball, suggesting that the pyramids might predate the Great Flood. You know, that massive flood that's in tons of ancient texts.
The one estimated around 9,000 BC.
Yep, that one. He points to marine life fossils and salt found inside the pyramids as evidence.
Hold up, are we talking structures that survived a global flood? That would mean they're way older than we think.
Right, and then there's the bent pyramid, the one with that weird, bent shape. Egyptologists often call it a practice pyramid, like they were still figuring things out.
Makes sense.
But Hayes argues that its unusual shape and construction suggests a way more advanced purpose, maybe even connected to, like, energy manipulation.
Okay, now that's intriguing. What about the Black Pyramid? It sounds kind of ominous.
Right. Most of it's crumbled, but what's left hints at some seriously unique building techniques. Plus, there's signs of a massive ancient explosion there.
An explosion? Like, what happened? Was it some kind of ancient Chernobyl situation?
We may never know for sure, but it adds to the mystery, right?
Totally. And speaking of energy, I got to ask about this connection Hayes makes between Nikola Tesla's ideas and what the ancient Egyptians might have been up to.
Oh, yeah, the whole free energy thing?
Yeah. Remember Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower? The one built on top of an aquifer.
Right. He wanted to transmit wireless energy, didn't he?
Exactly. And Hayes ties that concept to descriptions of aquifers, underground water tunnels, and solar energy being harnessed in ancient Egypt.
So like pyramids as giant power plants, channeling energy from the earth and the sun.
It sounds pretty wild, but honestly, the more we talk about this, the less crazy it seems.
I know, right? And then there's this whole thing about quartz crystal. Today, we use it in tech because it can hold and transmit energy in all these fascinating ways. Hayes thinks the ancient Egyptians were onto this too, and that they used it on a massive scale.
And what about those crystal basins they found near the pyramids? The ones with perfectly drilled holes? I remember seeing those in documentaries. They always say it was for animal sacrifices, but that always felt kind of simplistic to me.
I know what you mean. Hayes's energy-based explanation makes way more sense, especially when you consider that quartz crystal naturally emits harmonic energy.
Right. It's like all these pieces start fitting together. And then there's the Book of the Dead. People think it's all spells and burial rituals.
Right. Just a bunch of magic mumbo-jumbo.
But it's actually a collection of ancient texts, some dating back over 3,500 years. And guess what? A lot of it's still untranslated.
Seriously, like we don't even know what it all says.
Nope. The British Museum has a massive archive of these texts, most never even seen by the public. It's like a whole library of ancient secrets just waiting to be unlocked. But are there parts of the Book of the Dead that actually talk about advanced technology?
There are definitely some passages that stand out. Like in the Hymn to Ra, there's this description of a celestial journey and an object hidden from view that passes over the sky.
Okay, a hidden object in the sky. That sounds kind of spaceshipy.
Right. But even if we don't go that far, it shows a deep understanding of astronomy and the cosmos.
I mean, they were tracking stars and planets thousands of years ago, aligning their structures with solstices and equinoxes. It takes serious knowledge to do that.
Totally. And then there's the passage about Osiris dwelling in a birth chamber and renewing his youth. Haze draws a parallel here to, get this, stem cell research and DNA cloning.
Wait, are we talking stem cells in ancient Egypt? That's wild.
Right. It really makes you rethink what they might have known.
Totally. What else you got?
Oh, one more thing about the Book of the Dead. There's this super vivid description of bright flames behind the sun god Ra. Now, some folks interpret that as a celestial event, but Haze suggests it might describe some kind of propulsion system, like something we haven't even invented yet.
Whoa. Okay, so we got pyramids that might be power plants, a Book of the Dead that sounds like a sci-fi manual, and now ancient Egyptians zipping around in spaceships. This is getting pretty out there.
It is, and it gets even wilder. Haze throws in this whole idea of the Brotherhood of the Snake. A reptilian race, he claims, ruled ancient Egypt before Akhenaten came along.
Reptilian overlords. Okay, now you've got to explain this one.
He ties this idea to Sobek, remember him, the crocodile-headed god.
Yeah, those statues are kind of creepy. What does he have to do with reptilian overlords?
Well, Haze sees Sobek as a symbol of this reptilian influence. And get this, he claims the word Messiah, which is central to so many religions, comes from an ancient reptilian term, Messa, or Musus.
Hold on, are you saying the concept of a Messiah has reptilian roots?
That's what Haze argues. And he even connects this ancient symbolism to modern stuff, like the caduceus, the medical symbol with two snakes, and the RX symbol on prescriptions. Did you know RX is pronounced Rex, which means king?
Whoa, I never thought about that. But why would reptilians be so into medicine?
That's a great question. And this is where Akhenaten comes in. Remember, he was all about pushing this monotheistic worship of the sun god Aten. He basically said, forget all the other gods, there's only one true god, and went about dismantling the temples of the other gods, including Sobek.
So he was staging a religious revolution. Sounds risky.
It was. And Haze suggests Akhenaten might have been aware of this great game being played by the Brotherhood, some kind of hidden control. He was trying to break free. He even established a new city, Amarna, as a kind of safe haven.
So it's like this cosmic chess match. Gods, reptilians, and pharaohs all vying for power.
It's intense, right? And it seems like Akhenaten might have become disillusioned. There are these clay tablets called the Amarna letters with generals begging for help against invaders, but Akhenaten just ignored them.
So his attempt to overthrow the Brotherhood backfired.
It seems like it. And after his death, they tried to erase him from history. Statues destroyed, his name chiseled off monuments like he never existed.
Wow. So did the Brotherhood win? Are they still out there?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a bit unnerving to think about.
Okay, before we spiral into a full-blown conspiracy theory, I have to ask about Mars. How do we go from ancient Egypt to Mars?
Believe it or not, the author brings up Total Recall, the 1990 film with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Total Recall?
Yeah.
What's that got to do with ancient Egypt?
He claims it's surprisingly accurate about a Martian colony and some advanced tech. And get this, he introduces this guy, Andrew D. Basiago. Basiago claims he was part of a secret government program called Project Pegasus.
Okay, I'm listening. What's Project Pegasus all about?
Well, Basiago says it involved time travel and teleportation.
Time travel and teleportation. Now we're talking.
Yeah. He claims he was even sent back to witness Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. He even described being given oversized shoes and a Union parka by a cobbler because his own clothes got lost in the quantum plenum during teleportation.
The quantum plenum. Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah.
But what does this have to do with Mars?
Well, Basiago also claims Project Pegasus went to Mars. He describes this Martian colony set up as a backup for humans in case something bad happened on Earth. And get this, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, President Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, has said she believes Basiago's story.
Wow, okay. So we're talking secret government programs, time travel, teleportation, a Martian colony, and all this is somehow tied back to ancient Egypt.
That's what Haze is suggesting. It's a lot to take in, I know.
It is. And there's more, right? This Richard Hoagland guy.
You got it. He's the one who really pushed the face on Mars thing, those images from the Viking orbiter.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. They really did look like a face carved into the surface.
Right. NASA said it was just a trick of light and shadow, but Hoagland wasn't buying it.
Typical NASA, always covering things up. But what else did Hoagland find?
He's got these theories about hyperdimensional physics and how it connects to ancient structures on both Earth and Mars. Basically, he thinks there are more dimensions than we know about, and ancient civilizations, maybe even on Mars, could tap into them.
Whoa, okay. More than 3 dimensions. That's a lot to process.
It is. And Hoagland claims NASA is hiding evidence of, blue skies, rivers, past civilizations on Mars.
Blue skies on Mars, so it's not just all red dust and rocks.
Right. He even talks about a secret space fleet and reverse-engineered UFO tech. He specifically mentions these TR-3 black manta triangular craft.
Okay, now we're in full-blown sci-fi mode. But if Hoagland's right, why would NASA keep all this a secret?
That's the big question, isn't it? What would happen if the world knew we weren't alone, or that we had the technology to travel through time and space?
It's a lot to think about. But let's bring it back down to Earth for a minute. What about this weighing of the heart ceremony and DNA?
Ah, yes. The weighing of the heart. It's all about judging a person's soul after death.
Right, if their heart was light, meaning they lived a good life, they could move on to the afterlife. But if it was heavy with bad deeds, well, let's just say that wasn't good.
Exactly. And Haze connects this to the idea of DNA purity.
DNA purity. Interesting. But how does DNA fit into all of this?
Well, think about mummification. They were obsessed with preserving the body for the afterlife. But what if they were also preserving something even more fundamental, like DNA?
So they weren't just trying to keep the bodies from rotting, they were preserving the building blocks of life itself.
Exactly. And then Haze brings up butterfly hybrids. You know how scientists today are manipulating DNA to create new species?
Yeah, kind of scary stuff.
He links that to ancient Egypt, suggesting they might have been experimenting with genetics thousands of years ago.
Genetic engineering in ancient Egypt. That's a big claim.
It is. Think about all those mummified animals. And the fact that the mummification court itself dates back to the pre-dynastic era.
So we're talking genetic engineering before they even had writing.
It's definitely a possibility. And to go even further back, Haze brings in the Babylonian creation myth and this fish god, Oonis.
The fish god, what's that all about?
He's described as having a human head and feet, but a fish's body, and he comes out of the sea to teach humans everything they need to know about civilization.
So like a divine teacher.
Exactly. Bringing knowledge of writing, science, art, law, agriculture, all the foundations of civilization.
So are we saying the Babylonians were visited by aliens too?
The myth certainly suggests it. And Haze points out that similar stories about ancient, advanced beings giving knowledge to early humans exist all over the world.
So it's like this global memory of alien encounters embedded in our myths.
Right. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. But back to the pyramids for a sec. Any hard evidence that they used advanced technology?
There's some interesting research. Haze cites these professors, Hug and Barsoom, who studied stone fragments from the pyramids. They compared them to quarry samples, and the chemistry didn't match.
Different chemistry. What does that mean?
Their research suggests the Egyptians created a type of geopolymer concrete, a synthetic stone, that was easier to work with than natural stone.
So they weren't just moving massive stones around, they were making a whole new material.
Right, and there's more. They found something called Martian spherules near the pyramids.
Martian spherules? What are those?
They're these tiny spheres thought to be formed by meteor impacts. We find them on Mars.
Okay. But what are they doing on Earth?
That's the question. Finding them near the pyramids is quite a coincidence. Haze suggests they might have been a building material for the pyramids.
Martian building materials for pyramid. This is getting wilder and wilder.
I know, right? And to top it all off, Haze throws in these controversial photos of a giant mummified finger allegedly found in Egypt.
A giant finger. Seriously, how big are we talking?
13 inches long. If it's real, that finger belonged to someone over 10 feet tall.
Okay, we've gone from ancient astronauts to reptilian overlords to Martian building materials, and now giants roaming ancient Egypt. This deep dive is just getting started, and my mind is already blown.
It's a lot to take in. And we're just scratching the surface.
This is definitely going to take more than one episode to unpack.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. It really makes you wonder how much our current view of history limits what we're even willing to consider. We always think of progress as this straight line, always moving forward.
Right, always getting better.
Exactly. But what if it's more like a cycle?
A cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Civilizations rise and fall, knowledge gets lost, and then rediscovered later.
I like that. It's kind of humbling, too. We get so caught up in the now we forget. Humans have been around for, a really long time. Who knows what incredible things they accomplished, only to be lost to history,
Exactly. And remember those Martian spherules we talked about?
Oh, yeah. Those tiny spheres found near the pyramids.
Right. And they're also found on Mars.
It makes you wonder how something from Mars ends up near pyramids. Was it just random chance? Or was there something else going on?
Right. And Haze even suggests they were used as a building material for the pyramids.
Wait, seriously?
I know it sounds crazy, but when you think about how massive those pyramids are, the incredible precision, the effort to move those stones...
It would have been insane.
Exactly. Maybe using a material like those spherules makes more sense than hauling those giant stones around.
So, tiny spheres from Mars used to build the pyramids. If that's true, that's a level of technology and interaction we haven't even dreamed of.
Right. It totally changes how we see ancient Egypt. And remember that Book of the Dead passage, the one about a celestial journey and an object that passes over the sky but is hidden?
The one that maybe describes a spacecraft.
Yep, that's the one. Even if we don't jump to spaceships right away, it still suggests the ancient Egyptians had a pretty advanced understanding of astronomy. They tracked stars, planets, aligned their buildings with solstices.
They were definitely way more advanced than we give them credit for.
Right. And then there's the fact that a lot of the Book of the Dead is still untranslated. Who knows what secrets those texts are hiding?
It's like a whole library of lost knowledge. Speaking of lost knowledge, that whole geopolymer concrete idea is wild. Imagine, if they could create a material like that, it changes everything.
Totally. Those professors, Hug and Barsoom, they did some fascinating research, but it hasn't been well received by mainstream archaeology.
Probably because it challenges everything they thought they knew.
Exactly. But sometimes the biggest discoveries come from challenging conventional thinking.
For sure. And who knows what we'll discover in the future that might shed light on all these ancient mysteries.
Right. We got to be open to new possibilities, even if they sound a little out there.
I agree. And speaking of out there, what about that giant mummified finger? If that's real, we're not just talking advanced tech. We're talking about beings that were totally different from us, way bigger.
Right. A 13-inch long finger, it's hard to even imagine.
It really makes you question the whole history of humanity.
Right. What if giants weren't just myths, but real beings? It's a wild thought.
Totally. And speaking of rewriting history, remember Akhenaten? The pharaoh who tried to change everything, establish a new religion, a new capital city. And then after his death, they tried to wipe him from history.
Yeah, it's like someone didn't want his ideas to spread.
Like his ideas were a threat.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what if his revolution had worked? Would Egyptian history have been totally different?
Right. It's a fascinating what if.
It is. Makes you wonder who benefited from silencing him.
Right. Was it just a power struggle? Or was there something more going on? Okay, so far, we've got pyramids that might be power plants, a Book of the Dead that reads like a sci-fi manual, connections to Mars, giants, and a pharaoh who tried to change the world. My head is spinning. How do we even begin to connect all these pieces?
That's the challenge, isn't it? Trying to see the bigger picture. And that's why new discoveries are so important. They can completely change our understanding.
It's like we're putting together a giant puzzle, but we only have a few pieces.
Exactly. But with every new piece, the picture gets clearer.
I hope so. And with technology like the James Webb Space Telescope, who knows what we might discover?
It's an exciting time to be alive, that's for sure.
It is. Okay, back to those TR-3 Black Manta craft. Reverse-engineered UFO technology. Come on, is that even possible?
Well, there have been tons of reports of triangular UFOs for years, and some people believe these Black Manta craft are secret government aircraft based on captured alien tech.
So, we're already flying alien tech. And remember Project Pegasus. Time travel and teleportation. It's like the line between science fiction and reality is getting really blurry.
It is. Makes you wonder if the things we think of as sci-fi might be closer to reality than we realize.
That's a pretty wild thought.
It is, and the author even talks about slow disclosure. The idea that the truth about aliens and advanced tech is being revealed slowly, bit by bit, to prepare us for something bigger.
I've heard about that, like they're afraid of mass panic if they just came out and said, hey, we're not alone.
Right. But what if the truth is already out there and we just have to connect the dots?
Maybe we do. Look at how the Pentagon admitted they've been studying UFOs for years, and all those whistleblowers coming forward with stories about secret space programs and alien encounters. Something's definitely shifting.
It does feel like something's changing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Ancient Egypt, aliens, advanced technology, giants. What are we supposed to do with all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is to never stop questioning. Be open to new information. Challenge the status quo, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
Totally. Even if some of these theories are wrong, exploring them has been incredible.
That's what makes these deep dives so fun. It's not about finding all the answers, it's about asking the right questions.
And those questions might lead us to a better understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Exactly. Now, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about consciousness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What about consciousness?
Well, think about what makes us human. Is it just our bodies, our brains, our DNA? Or is there something more, something that defines who we are?
That's a deep question. I've always believed there's more to us than just flesh and blood. But how do you even define something like consciousness?
It's not easy, but some folks think consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism.
Okay, keep going.
And that our brains are like receivers tuned into this universal consciousness.
So we're all connected on some level. That's kind of beautiful.
It is. And what if that connection explains things like telepathy, precognition, even time travel? What if those aren't supernatural, just different expressions of consciousness?
Whoa, okay, now you're really pushing the boundaries.
Maybe. And remember that Book of the Dead quote? The one that could be about a spacecraft. What if it's not about a physical object at all, but like a vehicle of consciousness?
A way for the soul to travel through time and space. I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
I know, it's a lot. But here's the thing. The author keeps talking about new discoveries. Well, there's one discovery that ties everything together.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What is it?
Remember those Martian spherules?
The ones found near the pyramids.
Yeah. What if they're not just building materials? What if they're remnants of an ancient, advanced civilization from Mars?
Okay, now you've got my attention.
What if the civilization had tech to travel through space and time, manipulate DNA, harness energy in ways we can't even imagine?
Okay, that's pretty wild. But why would they come to Earth? And what happened to them?
Those are the million-dollar questions. But what if they didn't just visit? What if they were the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians?
Wait, are you saying the ancient Egyptians descended from Martians?
It sounds crazy, but think about it. The sudden rise of the Egyptian civilization, their advanced knowledge, the obsession with stars and the afterlife, the elongated skulls of some pharaohs, even their mummification practices.
It's like you're connecting all the pieces. But how could Martians survive on Earth?
It's definitely speculative. But imagine a cataclysmic event on Mars. A small group escapes to Earth. They bring their advanced knowledge and tech, share it with the people here, become the founders of this incredible civilization.
Okay, I can see how that could happen, but is there any evidence?
Well, remember that giant mummified finger?
The 13-inch long one.
What if it's not just a random giant, but a descendant of those Martian survivors?
Interesting. What if there are more remains out there, maybe buried in Egypt?
Right, maybe hidden in some secret archive. But even if we accept that, how does consciousness fit in?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
What if consciousness isn't just from our brains? What if it connects us all across time and space? Maybe those Martians could tap into that universal consciousness, travel through time, communicate with other dimensions.
Okay, you're taking us deep down the rabbit hole. But I gotta admit, it's fascinating.
It is. And remember the idea of slow disclosure. What if this is all part of a bigger plan?
A plan for what?
Maybe to prepare us for the truth about our origins, about how connected we all are, about how vast consciousness really is.
Like a cosmic awakening.
Exactly. And it brings us back to that question. Can we rediscover those lost secrets of ancient Egypt? Or maybe, are we even ready for those secrets?
That's a good question. Are we ready for the truth about who we are and where we come from?
That's the big one, isn't it? And maybe the answer is, not yet. But we're getting there, and when we are, the world will never be the same.
Well, that's a lot to think about. Okay, I think I finally caught my breath after all that Martian ancestor talk and consciousness exploration.
It is a lot to unpack, and remember, these are theories, not necessarily facts.
True. True. But even as theories, they really make you question everything you thought you knew.
That's the point, right? To stretch those brain muscles a bit.
Right. And that's what makes these deep dives so fun. They push us to think outside the box,
Absolutely. They encourage us to consider different possibilities, to embrace the mystery of it all. And speaking of mystery, there's one thing we haven't really touched on. Secret societies.
Ooh, secret societies. Like the Illuminati.
Well, Haze mentions groups like the Freemasons and their possible connections to ancient knowledge.
Okay, that's interesting. But do they really have all this secret ancient wisdom? It kind of sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Think about it. Groups like the Freemasons, they've been around for ages and they're super secretive. Their rituals and symbols often draw on ancient Egyptian stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not crazy to think they might have preserved some of that lost knowledge, passed it down through generations,
I see what you mean. If you had information that could change the world, you wouldn't just shout it from the rooftops, would you?
Exactly. Haze even suggests some of these groups might be, secretly guiding humanity's evolution.
Guiding our evolution. That's a big claim.
It is. He thinks that they're preparing us for the eventual truth about, everything we've been talking about.
Aliens, advanced tech, the whole shebang. But who are they to decide what's best for everyone else?
Good point. We got to be careful with those kinds of assumptions. Not all secret societies are necessarily good or bad. It's all about motives and actions.
Exactly. We can't just blindly accept what anyone tells us. We need to think for ourselves, do our own research,
Couldn't agree more. And that brings us back to consciousness.
Consciousness.
Again, think about it. Haze mentions it throughout the book, but I think it's the key to understanding everything.
Okay, I'm listening. But how does consciousness explain ancient astronauts, reptilian overlords, all that stuff?
What if consciousness is more than just our brains? What if it's like a fundamental force in the universe?
The force.
Yeah, the source of creation, the energy behind evolution, the bridge connecting us to other dimensions, other timelines even.
Whoa, okay. You're blowing my mind again.
Right.
But how can we even understand something that big?
Maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to fully grasp it with our rational minds. Maybe it's about experiencing it, tapping into it, realizing we're all part of something much bigger.
So you're saying the ancient Egyptians, maybe those Martian ancestors, they understood consciousness better than we do?
It's possible. Look at their spiritual practices, their art, their architecture, their connection to the cosmos. They were aware of something beyond the material world.
Like they were tuned into a frequency we've forgotten about.
Maybe. And maybe that's why we're so drawn to them. We sense they had a piece of the puzzle we're missing.
And you think the key to finding that missing piece lies within ourselves?
Maybe. We got to look inward, explore our own consciousness to unlock those ancient secrets.
So this deep dive into ancient Egypt, aliens, all of it, it's been a journey of self-discovery.
In a way, yes. Expanding our awareness, challenging assumptions, embracing the mystery of our existence, and maybe remembering who we are and where we came from.
Wow, that's quite a journey we've been on. We started with ancient Egypt and ended up exploring, pretty much everything. Martian ancestors, consciousness, secret societies, the whole 9 yards.
And the amazing thing is, it's just the beginning. There's always more to learn, more questions to ask.
So true. And on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to thank you all for joining us on this wild ride.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, keep exploring these topics. Ask questions. Challenge the status quo. Never stop seeking knowledge.
Well said. Who knows what amazing discoveries await us in the future? Until next time, keep those minds open and those imaginations fired up.